Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Michael Earls, enterprise cloud and AI transformation leader, author, and technology strategist with more than 20 years of experience across infrastructure, cloud modernization, AI adoption, and enterprise transformation. And so we'll discuss with him why most AI initiatives stall and what the path to shipping actually looks like, and much more. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, AJ. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Michael. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn from you about why AI initiatives stall and much more. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I've been in IT for 20 years. I started out building applications, building data centers, and then that's morphed into cloud and now AI. I've been on the customer side. I've been a vendor, and I've been a consultant. So I've seen three different angles and three different changes in the industry itself, as well as how things have evolved and a different, I call them earthquake kind of shattered moments of AI, mobile, the data centers, and I've seen so many changes going on in the world just around that infrastructure piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. So many changes going around the world. In terms of, uh, AI initiatives, how would you want people to understand, even a small business owner, about AI initiatives? Is it about AI initiatives that organizations are taking, or also about, people who are working in AI and wanting to create something for their customers?
Hmm. I describe that as an interesting question. It's a multi-pronged approach. You talked about why AI stalls, why there's um, a misinterpretation in the world we're living in today, and then how does it actually help and drive things forward. So I look at three approaches today, and the first one is, AI stalls, real simple, because of people. And what I mean by that is there's no clear business outcome. There's no ownership. Because of that, processes aren't being met. And then directions get lost. So when you kind of drill deeper into that one, which is, um, did AI start with a business strategy? Probably not. AI started because somebody said, "Hey, we need AI. We need to go meet our competitors where they are. They're using AI. Well, let's go bring this in." And that's why when you start looking at AI from a directional standpoint, it always stalls out. Is that it sounds great on paper, it's meeting the demand of my board and the stock market, but in essence, if there's no goal, there's no direction, there's no leadership, AI is going to fail. So you have to start looking backwards and going, what is AI really doing? It's the same thing that we do when we look at growing a company, which is, why are we growing? What products are we bringing to the market? Where's that growth coming from? What's the value in there? And then I have to look at is, when AI comes out, there's so many different AI tools, which is now turning into this AI sprawl. So I talked about, I've been in technology a long time. We had this thing called um, IT sprawl, and that was around when cloud kind of came out. Lines of business, developers were bypassing IT and using their credit card to pay for services. And so they're bypassing that governance, the data structure, the process, the ownership, and just paying with the credit card. We got the same problem with technology today, which is that AI sprawl, which means we've got Gemini, we've got Claude, we've got ChatGPT, we've got Copilot. I mean, there's so many different variations of different LLMs and SLMs out there. It's where do you start? Well, every organization probably has 10 plus. They're and some are using the browser, some are using the apps. There's no governance around that. So there's no structure around that. Now you have to kind of worry about data leakage, what data is going out there. What are my users doing with the data? What's AI doing with my data if I don't put those guardrails and structures around it? And that leads to, you know, kind of pilot purgatory. Things get started, things stop, then you start that direction again, things get started and stopped. What happens is things never really graduate. It's graduation, month here in the States. People graduate May and June, and you're thinking, how do I actually get my AI project to graduate from a pilot? And that's where everybody's stuck today. So I kind of look at it as, again, ownership issue, business outcomes, and one thing I didn't even talk about, which is that human resistance that we're seeing now. It's really odd. Is you know you think of like the old cell phones. Like everybody didn't want a cell phone. Now everybody's got a cell phone, and it's just the new norm. You're seeing so much noise in the industry today where people don't want data centers. They want farmlands. They don't want data centers close to the housing development. And then all of a sudden now you've got two different schools out there. One that wants technology, one wants to grow and scale, and then you got the other one saying, "Oh my God, the world's falling." And now you've got this resistance between the two outcomes and two personas out there, which is then driving this weird kind of resistance, and then it's turning into this like tech resistance. I almost think of 5G when that came out. There was a lot of resistance to that, and then there's so much noise in the world we're living in today. And when I look at it, the noise around AI strategy, problems that they're having, where's the focus at? Every week there's a new model, a new agent, a new platform, a new announcement. I almost kind of feel leaders today are drowning in options. And that speed without direction becomes noise.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what can leaders do about this in terms of, that everything that they want to adopt and adapt to happens smoothly, and also the human part or the resistant part is also taken care of? What is the best suggestion for this from you, somebody who knows about everything as a technologist, also as somebody who sees the other and understands the other side of things?
Hmm. I love that question because I think that gets lost. And I think you've written a little bit about it, and it's called clarity. So I describe it as the first thing leaders need to do is to create clarity. Before discussing models, agents, co-pilots, they have to answer that simple question. What problems are we trying to solve, and why does it matter? From there, you can build a direction before technology. You can reduce that noise. You can actually put a committee or someone in charge to drive that outcome. That's going to create accountability, decision making authority, and that's going to drive the next path from pilot to production. And then I feel the thing the most of all is we have to lead with the human side. And what I mean by that is technology changes at a rapid pace. Human beings don't. So we always have to stay human, stay focused on people. Technology, again, it's going to change. So I think we have to look at how do we stay human? How do we spend a lot of our time talking about artificial intelligence? I think leaders need to spend just as much time talking about human intelligence, emotional intelligence, and relational intelligence. And those organizations that do that, they're going to win. regardless of which AI tool they choose. But they have to start somewhere. And I feel that clarity reduces noise. I feel like clarity will focus on an outcome. And we all know every transformation is ultimately a people transformation.
Right, right, Michael. You talk about, that leaders generally try to optimize for speed, whereas the thing that is required is the direction. Help us
Yes.
understand from that point of view, why is it that they are optimizing for speed when direction is first needed? How will speed doesn't matter if the direction is not correct.
I absolutely agree. Um, it's always like saying, I can run around with scissors. Is it safe? And uh, a lot of organizations today are missing that direction piece. They might have a top down initiative that says we need AI. Perfect. We also need employees. We need better healthcare. We need everybody drive cars. Is that a right direction? I don't know. I don't know what the business does. So that's why I always say you have to stop, look, build that clarity first, figure out where you're trying to go. What business problems are we trying to solve? Once we know what we're trying to solve, now it's, can I add more noise? It's, can I add more AI to that? Is AI going to help reduce? Is AI going to help me build faster? Is AI going to allow me to do more with less? Those are questions that need to be answered. Not, can AI do everything for me? It's, where's the right project? Where's the right process to ingest AI into what I'm trying to accomplish? What is my North Star at this point? I talk a lot about that, and I'm always thinking, businesses used to have that. And it's so weird. Look at every business model today. They had one product or a few products. And now you've got businesses that own so many disparate products out there that have nothing to do with that core mission. They, I'm not going to name some names, but a company that makes toilet paper now owns dog food. Why? How does that relate back to what the core founders focused on, which was building, home products, toilet paper, cleaning supplies, and all of a sudden now we're buying dog food. I'm like, I don't know, and I always think, where am I going, and how do I get there? I always describe, you have to have a compass. We all have GPSs on our phone. Every company should have a GPS that says, here's where we need to go. What are the steps I need to take in order to get there? And clarity is always the one that gets left out.
Right, Michael. Anyone would say, Michael, you have been in the industry for so long. You should be an insider. You should be betting for the industry. Here you are talking about things that others are concerned about outside the industry. Why is it like that? Is there any story behind it? Is there any particular realization behind it? Or is this the way you are?
It's funny you asked that, and a lot of my realization as has come about. There's been a change in my role, and I look at it is that I became a grandfather. I feel like I'm a young granddad, and you start thinking a little more clearly, like, a human being can create a human being, but a human, baby can't do anything without people. They need parents, they need grandparents, they need, caregivers. And I feel like that has led me to think differently. But at the same time, I've always thought differently. Um, which is why I started writing a couple years ago around, what drives me. how do I reduce the noise? Where's my clarity? Where's those things I miss? And a lot of it, I think, came from being in lockdown. COVID really drove a whole new world, and it drove people away from people. And I'm a people person. I love to sit and talk and be around people. And I notice sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to do that anymore. And I'm going, who is that person anymore? So I started writing down a lot of my ideas, my thoughts, and my processes, and where's my brain going. And I took a leap and I said, I'm posting this out to the world. I'm posting on michaelearls.com, on LinkedIn. And then all of a sudden, people are people are going, oh my God, I feel the same way. And then it made me feel there's that reassurance out there that what I'm talking about is resonating with people. And then a fellow friend of mine, um, Yogi, said, why don't you write a book? And I was like, oh, there's no way. And then all of a sudden, everything I talk about ended up in my first book. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's so weird. You're asking about why AI projects stall. And my book is Finding Direction in the Age of AI. And it's not about AI. It's about you, the human being, the person, and being able to find your North Star when there's so much noise about AI going around. And then I look at, my oldest daughter moved out. She had a baby. My youngest daughter is in college, trying to find where her North Star is. And I've seen so many young people out there lost. They're just stuck into their phone. And then it just made me think about that, which is, how do I help them? How do I bring back the world I grew up in, which is we talk to people, we ask for help, we engage with others, and that kind of led to my second book that's out there, which is, my wife hates when I call it this, but I call it a daily devotional, which is a story, a quote, an AI prompt. I know it sounds kind of odd, but the AI prompts change, and it's like, how do I reduce that noise? How do I build a structure in my day? Things that we forget about. And I started noticing it when, I've worked for some very large companies and some small ones, and just the noise, the beeps, if I had my email saying you got mail every 2 seconds, I would go nuts. But we turn on notifications for our email, for our phones, text messages, and then all of a sudden Slack and Zoom and Teams, you lose yourself because you're trying to run in 100 different directions at the same time. And I I just finished my third book. It's called the Digital Compass, and it's so odd because I look at it and I go, how do I take a compass that we all grew up with? Some of us used it, some don't know how to use it, but how do I use that to build some kind of, I don't know if I call it a foundation around how do I reduce noise in my life? How do I go towards a North Star? And then how do I maneuver around that? Yes, it might change daily, but I have to have some kind of vision, some direction. My parents used to kick me in the, in the rear when I was doing something wrong. We don't do that anymore. Um,
Right.
Parents used to lead you, and I'm trying to help lead people to something better.
Absolutely, Michael. So you talk about human connection. And so, is there anything that you think within this whole age of, AI, more AI, and, so-called better AI, that makes you positive about human connection? Or do you feel much more uh, not so good about the future of human connection? How do you view the world?
Hmm. If you're asking me if I think AI is going to replace humans, I'm not going to answer that one. But I always feel When you think of human connection, um, go to the office, and I know it sounds kind of funny, and put a coffee machine there, a tea machine. What do you have? You have people that actually gathered there. Even though the coffee was horrible, what did they do? They used to gather and they used to talk. And that created a connection. Ideas were shared, relationships were built, mentorship happened. People found their first love or second love at work. I think we need to be very careful in that pursuit of efficiency. We don't accidentally automate our way the very moments that make us human.
Absolutely, Michael. So all these things, they touch you, they make you feel, they make you do that understanding of things better. Being a grandfather also makes you think more. A lot of these creators of so many tools, they are also many of these. Why is it that only it strikes Michael Earls and not them? Why is it like that? They are also humans, or are they not?
I think there's too much noise in our life. They're also humans, and again, they're not leading; they're following. And what I say they're following is they're following that next beep, that next ding, that next text message. I used to spend my life flying around the world, and I've been to India, Bangalore, Chennai, Coimbatore, Singapore, and the best thing about that, no cell phones. I can't talk on a plane. No wireless over the ocean. You have to spend time with your own self, your own mind. And I always feel that I think people relying more on technology to think for them versus the other way around. I want to enable technology to reduce the noise in my life. I would enable technology to do those repeatable tasks. I know it sounds funny, but I almost feel like humans are turning into machines. And what I mean by that is, what do most humans do today? They talk to Claude, they talk to Chat GPT, they talk to Copilot, and they're writing different prompts in each one, and then they're copying and pasting it and talking to another AI LLM. And then all of a sudden, their day goes, I didn't actually use my brain to think anymore. All I did was act like a machine. And I think that's the world we're bordering right now. People are turning into machines.
What
And
role can
yeah, go ahead.
right, Michael? Carry on, carry on.
I know I just was I was probably rambling about something, but it's I
No
always
problem.
when I talk about that, it also goes back to the initial conversation, which is AI initiatives stall. Why? When organizations chase technology. And then when they chase that technology before establishing that direction. So it's how do I free my mind, open up, use my brain to actually think where I'm going, how I'm getting there. It's the old days of who, what, when, and where, and we didn't have Ubers. You had to call a taxi, or you figured out how to walk to get there. So I always think technology moves fast, and I've seen so many different um, movements, tectonic shifts. That's the key word out there of technology, and it always comes back to clarity, alignment, ownership, and how leaders or leadership is missing that core direction. So I'm sorry for rambling on that one.
Not at all, not at all, Michael. So, how do you want leaders to look at this whole adopting and adapting to a lot of changes, there's a lot of AI into their organizations' lives, because a lot of leaders have individual organizations, small businesses, and all, and they can certainly decide for themselves and bring down a lot of human connection, bring a lot of human aspect into whatever way they adopt and adapt to AI. That is a lot of thing. How do you like to them to think of AI?
Hmm. Um, I so I always think, you know, leadership has the ability to create a vision, a direction, clarity, but they have to allow others to see through that confusion. And then, how can AI provide information? It can generate so much. So I think of data, and I love talking about this story, but I got pulled over one time for driving a car that was reportedly stolen. Data is only as good as the data. So if the data was correct, then I probably wouldn't have got pulled over. So then I look at this and I go, those are problem statements. How do you solve those? Better data or better tools to manage that data. AI can do a lot of great things around data itself. So, how does AI actually manage that data in a way that's going to empower people? And then, how does management keep that train on the tracks? I always wanted to ride that train between cities in India because I've read stories about it. And I always look and I go, how do people stay on that train? How does management keep the train on those tracks? And then how does leadership decide where the train's going? Those are things I think about at that point. And then I always think, I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I always say, go find that North Star. In a world that's accelerating, leadership becomes the art. How does leadership become the art of helping others find that North Star? That's what I think we need to focus on is leaders used to lead. They didn't dictate. They enabled people. They drove people to be better. We need to go find those people again. We need to go recreate this leader version that says, I'm going to help AJ be a better person. I'm going to go help Michael go be a better person. He might have stuff going on at home. I'm going to help him create the right tools and bridge that all together. And if AI is part of it, great, because AI is going to make my job easier. I need people like Michael to be here. They have a vision, they have a direction, they know where they want to go, but I need to give them the right tools to get there.
Absolutely, absolutely, Michael. There is so much to learn about all this from you, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about you, learn from your books. What's the best way for them to do so?
You can go to michaelearls.com. So my first name, last name, .com. You can follow me on LinkedIn. So it's Michael Earls on LinkedIn. And then the 3 books I have out there are on Amazon. You can purchase them anywhere. That's Finding Direction in the Age of AI, the Digital Compass that's coming out this month, and Wired for Purpose. And you can always reach out to press@michaelearls.com. So I appreciate your time, AJ. This has been fun. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you again.